It's a real pleasure to be here today and to have a chance, I think, to talk about dialogue in the dark, and mainly how I came up with the idea and what drove me to invent an exhibition and to be, let's say, to engage on the employment front for disabled people. You know, actually, I'm doing dialogue in the dark for 22 years, and there are all the time two main questions. The first question is, well, how you came up with the idea. And the second question is, well, sounds interesting, but how you can stay alive with such a concept. When somebody asks me how you came up with the idea, I immediately have, let's say, another question. I say, listen, do you want to hear the short version or do you want to hear the long version? This maybe is a good advice. If you are talking to somebody, you can quickly identify his interest. So when the guy says, okay, I want to hear the short version, so I know, okay, low level of interest. When the guy says long version, so I feel pleased. In any case, I will tell my story. So it's just how to say, to figure out, let's say, do a little bit of marketing research. Okay, I will tell you the short story. And the short story started actually 1928. This is quite a long time ago. And that's the year where my parents were born. And my mother grew up in Poland, and she has a Jewish family. And my father grew up in Germany, and he was educated by the Nazis. And you can imagine, let's say, a family story which is based on such a very, very weird background. On one side, family, my mother's side was, well, exterminated. There's nobody alive. And of course, my father was very, very upset when the war was over and the Germans lost the war. I was 13 years old when I became aware about this very, very strange family constellation. And it happened, in fact, while I was watching one of these documentaries about Second World War. And you know, and the German airplanes went down and bombed, I don't know, Kiev or Warsaw, I have no idea, doesn't matter. And there was a sequence of this film when suddenly the Jewish people were brought on the trains to be sent to the camps and to be killed. And when I saw this sequence, I said, and the Jews, they are the guilty ones, and that's the reason why we lost the war. And my mother started crying and said, I was confused, why are you crying? Do you have any compassion with the Jews? And he said, listen, I have to tell you a story. And then she told me the story. It was the first time in her life that she was telling me the story of my family. Well, in those days, 13 years old, I was very proud to have an army, you know, these toys. Out of plastic toys, I had tanks and airplanes and war and ships and all that stuff. So I had quite a good army. And the next day, I painted all the tanks white, and I put red crosses on the tanks. So no more army. This was maybe the first disarmament, let's say, initiative from a 13-year-old boy. Anyhow, this was definitely a very, very shocking moment for me. And it was definitely something which, how to say, was completely giving me a new position suddenly in my life. I have to admit that my school career was not at all, how to say, a good example. I was very, very, well, most of the time I was bored. I was very, very bad in sports, so there was no career inside. And in fact, from my first days on, I knew exactly what I don't like. I never had an idea what I like, but I knew exactly what I don't like. Okay, I studied literature and history, had an idea, okay, I want to become a teacher, but being 2 weeks in the school shows me clearly I will never become a teacher, not because I was, let's say, bored by the kids. This was okay, but I did not like at all, let's say, the attitude of the teachers who were from 8 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock complaining about the bad use. After 2 weeks, I gave up. Okay, what to do? I said, okay, wow, now I have two choices. I can become unemployed, sounds not very compelling, or I write my thesis So I will become a doctor. Sounds fantastic, sounds very, very interesting, attracting, but in fact it's the same. So you can be unemployed, you can become a doctor, it's the same. So for 6 years I was writing my thesis to understand the German-Jewish relation. And this was, how to say, the approach to understand better what happened during the Second World War and why all the time it's not a German phenomenon, why it seems to be so easy to exclude people suddenly. Okay, again, I was bored, but I had a certain German stubbornness. And so yesterday, there's a guy who runs through the desert and climbs the mountains, and I don't know what he is doing all the time. Anyhow, I think he talks about endurance. And if you are lacking of talent, believe me, endurance is a really very important, let's say, characteristics. So, no excuse. All right, I finished my thesis. I became a doctor of philosophy. Sounds great. No, means nothing. Anyhow, I was very proud, I have to admit, that I now could, let's say, succeed in writing my thesis, but I never use it. Anyhow, then I started my career in a radio station. I wanted to become a journalist, because I thought, okay, wow, media, great, sounds fantastic. But after maybe 1 year, I was bored again, because I didn't like the attitude from the media people. Everybody is a star, everybody is important, and we knows what to do, and we are the, let's say, rulers of the world. So I was at all, again, quite bored by being a radio guy. And one day, I was asked by my director if I'm interested to educate or to train a colleague who lost his sight by an accident. I have to admit, another time, I had no idea about disability, was not interesting me. I had some pity, some awkward feelings when I saw a disabled or crippled guy on the street. And then suddenly I was asked to take care of this blind chap, 28 years old. And I said, oh my gosh, how this will work out, you know, me and the blind. Okay, I went to his home and rang the bell. And the door was open, and then I said, oh, maybe I'm looking for a blind man. Is this your neighbor? No, come in. This guy was handsome. How comes that a blind man can be handsome? I was really confused. Okay, second surprise, he invited me to enter, and suddenly he was walking, not like this gentleman, by the way, straight on. And we entered the living room, and he poured a cup of coffee in my cup. And I said, this guy is cheating. This is impossible. And then suddenly he even started smoking without burning the house. So this was, how to say, a very, how to say, strange situation. And I was, I have to say, surprised on one side, but it was the second really shocking situation in my life that I, as a well-educated, whatever it means, guy, with this family history and with this, let's say, openness to understand and even writing a thesis about exclusion and the Jews and so on, were able, or stupid enough, to judge such quickly just out of the lack of, let's say, encounter, just out of the lack of having the chance to talk to somebody who cannot see or who sees differently.